Hi, Klaus. What was your first computer?
Hi, Adam. So my first computer was an Atari ST, 1040 ST.
Nice one. With nice graphics. It was the Amiga competitor.
Yes, and there were always fierce discussions between those two groups, the Amiga users and the Atari users.
So how you got it?
Actually, my father bought it, but I was quick also trying it out. I mean, it was, I think, about 13 when we got it. And first, my friends and I, we were doing games, of course. And quickly, I sometimes got sick of just doing what the programs, the games prepared for me, and wanted to learn how I can do my own things there. So started programming. Started probably as many people at that time with BASIC. And there was this nice BASIC dialect, GFA BASIC at the time. GFR BASIC. I mean, at that time I just pronounced it in German. Okay. It was specific for Atari, I think.
Mm-hmm. One question regarding gaming. What I remember was the Atari. There was a game about martial arts. This was like a samurai or karate or something. But this was not. The graphics were beautiful. I only had the opportunity to watch it several times, but I remember vividly. There was like a figure with a sword or something like this. This was not like just karate fighting. So it was more than that. Do you remember the game?
I don't know. There were several martial arts games.
But the graphics were beautiful back then. Yeah, for that time.
Yeah, sure.
So I had the ZX Spectrum, and I know the Atari was a completely different world for me.
Yeah, so in the beginning, we just had, as my father bought it for work, we just had this monochrome monitor. So in the beginning, I couldn't really participate. But later on, with my own saved money, I then bought that color monitor, and then
CRT, of course.
It was much nicer. Yeah.
Your father was a programmer?
No, not at all. Actually, he was a forester, but still he worked with the computer in his spare time and did things with text programs at the time and so on.
Oh,
even created databases and relational databases. Yeah,
I worked in a city of Wolfsburg one time, and in the train back, there were in the train some people who had a conversation about transactions, satellites, and rabbits. And I say, rabbits? And then I say, okay, sorry. I'm not supposed to hear what you're saying, but it's way too interesting. Why you are tracking rabbits via satellites and why you need transactions? They say, yeah, we have the problem with, so they do some statistics, and they were, I think, in Nuremberg. And they have to count rabbits in Bavaria and to provide some statistics. And this is a hard job because they drive around with a multivan and try, to count the rabbits. Okay, not that interesting. And then they start with wild pigs. And I asked them, and they say, okay, the wild pigs is another problem because they have to catch them. And I don't know they have to catch them. There was a computer from Netherlands, and they have to attach the computer to the wild pig. And the computer measured, I don't know what, blood pressure and whatever. And then they had to catch the pig again to get the data. And this was very dangerous. And they say, because it's dangerous, this is the job of students. So, okay, understood. And then what I remember, I don't know whether you know peer-to-peer technology, Jackstar back then with Java. And I told them, okay, what you could do, you could build a pig network, between the pigs. So then one pig will transmit data to another pig, and then it's enough just to catch one pig, and they will get the data of the entire family, or how to call it. And they told me, this is great, because then they could, to measure to observe the behavior of pigs, how often one family, meets the other family, and this is a complete different area of research. And then they asked me, okay, they wanted to go out in the train in Nuremberg, but they stay until Munich. They bought another ticket, and we had conversation about design of such a system. So there was also, you said that your father was a forester with computer background, and this was exactly the same. They were like, scientists, and for me it was crazy interesting, to try. And they wanted to use satellites, to have pictures of the rabbits, but they were too small back then. And pigs would work, but for pigs they need another data. So I just immediately got, this story about, this was an institute for, in German was Wildtierzuchtforschung or something like this. I remember this because I got the business cards from them and everything, right? So sorry for the interruption. So you started GFA Basic. Yes, and because the game became too boring and you wanted to do something else, is what I understood, right?
Yes, exactly. So in the beginning, I tried some graphics and game programming, but not really stuck to it. And also, BASIC was not the real thing. So for Atari, like many other systems, C programming was actually the real thing. And at that time, I didn't have the internet, so I had to rely on books. The Atari ST Profi Buch, I think it was called.
Oh, okay.
Was explaining all the BIOS
in 24 hours,
everything.
Right? So everything was 24 hours or in 7 days. So Profi in for dummies. Exactly.
Yeah, so that was actually going quite deep into it. So really all explaining all the BIOS hooks and everything. So really deep into the operating system. And so I started C programming and later even a bit of assembler for that processor, the processor that was part of the Atari, I think the Motorola processor.
Yeah.
And did some optimized things. I remember that with those early hard disks we had.
Yeah, one question. What is the very first program you wrote?
Don't really remember, actually.
But what was the idea? I know usually you would like to...
Okay, so one of the first things I tried was motivated by games. I created some simple sprites, so a little icon, and tried to move it around the screen and used for loops for this. And so that was how I got the idea of for loops and coordinates on the screen. It was pretty much the first thing I remember, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, and then you find out that BASIC is not the real thing? Or why you find it out? Because in
the book and everywhere there were references to C and the C data structures of the operating system, and it was always cumbersome to make use of all these things from within BASIC. You had to use those commands for manipulating memory. I think peek and poke it was called, and that was
drove me crazy. Peek and poke.
Yes.
So the BASIC was okay, but I always ask now how they got the idea what this is supposed to do. There was no way for me to find out what the numbers actually are meaning. This was and you were also frustrated with peek and pokes?
Yeah, so it was for manipulating those data structures that are then used for those operating system routines. And so in C, those were just normal, ordinary data structures, and it was very natural to deal with these things. And I know that I even saved my pocket money 400 marks at that time, quite a bit.
400? Now it's 200 euros, much more than that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and I saved that to buy the first development suite around C. So pure C, it was
from
what first was known as Borland, I think.
Borland.
So it was first known as Turbo C, and on the other, in the rest of the world, so on PCs, but on Atari, I think it was then pure C. And so it was the compiler, the debugger, and everything.
And how you installed that with floppies? Floppy disk or?
Good question. I think I had it on floppies. I must have. I mean, when I started, we didn't even have a hard drive. As far as
the smaller floppies or the larger one?
The smaller ones. But they it was double density, not high density. That's what I remember.
But you have to do a hole, and then you had the high density, right?
Yeah, but the floppy drive inside the Atari only could do double density.
Ignore the holes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you started with C, and what you did with C then? Better sprites?
No, so one thing I remember is that I wanted to also create those user interfaces that were common already on the Atari. So with this Graphics Environment Manager, GEM, I think, similar to what the Mac had at that time, and would have been still very advanced for the PC world. So that's what I was trying to do. So more utility development. And one of the things, when we got a hard drive, it was, I don't know, 10 or 20 megabytes or something. It still took quite some time to get the information how much space is still free on that hard drive.
Okay.
And I thought that might go better. And then I actually wrote a small assembler routine going through these data structures of the file allocation table and counting the free blocks, and embedded that then into a C program that did the whole user interfacing.
How old were you back then?
15 or 16, I think.
And how much time do you spend with computers?
I don't know. At that time, quite a bit, I think. But
2 hours a day?
Maybe. I mean, there was school, and I had still sports and everything. So, yeah.
Okay.
I still had a life apart from computers, but it was quite a bit.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what you did with the program, you could actually sell it, right?
Yes, I called Atari because I told them that's my tool is much faster than what you have built into your operating systems, and they told me I should send it to them, but they never replied. So I don't know.
This is how Apple started, probably, you know. Then Steve Jobs got it, and this was the initial, you know. Okay. Yeah, this is a pity, actually. If they would respond, you know, this would be this is a big deal for 15 years old. But this is actually cool. Okay, and what happened then? So how long you had the Atari?
I think I was 17 or 18 then. So
5 years?
Yeah. When I then had to use a PC because I got my first programming job, so to speak.
With 18?
I was doing some with 17. I was still at school, so.
How you got it?
I was doing some C programming for a small company nearby.
So how you found the company?
It was, I think, the uncle of some girl in my class, really just by local connections.
Okay.
And so it was DOS programming, and later on also Windows, Visual Studio then for Windows 3.1, I think. And for that I needed a PC.
What the company did, and what you actually provided for them? So what you implemented?
Did some software that is used to maintain programs for, I don't know the English terms for that, Werkzeug machine.
The tooling, right? The tool machines.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. And those programs for those machines need to be maintained and edited somehow. And they developed those specific editors for those machines, and also some software to maintain the modules that are used for those machines. And I helped develop an editor for those machines. First on DOS and later on Windows. And
help means you did larger parts, or you just formatted code? So what was your job?
A bit more. So I started. So they just started exploring Windows at that time. So they still had just DOS, and I was, I think, pretty much the first person just looking at Visual Studio and all these tools and trying out how to use the Microsoft Foundation classes, I think it was called, to
MFC.
Do Windows programming, and then got into this UI programming for Windows a bit.
And which school was it? You were at Gymnasium, German high school, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Gymnasium, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so not bad, because Gymnasium is already pretty hard. So you had time to work, aside, and you had still life, and girls, friends with companies behind. So nice. And you started to study something, I suppose, computer science.
Computer science, yeah. So, in Aachen.
Okay, and you really knew that, the computer science is a thing, so you like that?
Yes, so people warned me all the time because they said it's going to be hard and a lot of mathematics, but I always knew I had to do that, and I never regretted it, so yes.
Yeah. So, at the university, so were you disappointed a bit, or you liked what happened to you at the university, or what was your experience?
So the beginning was a bit hard because, at least at that time, I don't know how it is these days, it was a lot of theory and mathematics. Mm-hmm. But I didn't regret it or anything. We just had to make sure that we get our practice aside from the classes. So I was living in a dormitory where we had our own network, and got then into network administration there. And that was also when I got into contact with Linux. And so I made sure I got some practical experience aside from the university classes.
Okay, cool. And you started to, which programming languages you use at the university? Still C?
In the classes, we had to use some Lisp dialect scheme, it was called, and I was also doing C and C++. So C++ I started already for the Windows programming.
And you liked Lisp?
At that time, not that much, to be honest. Yeah. The functional programming came back over the past, 10 or 15 years, of course, with a lot of interesting languages, but at that time, I wasn't too impressed. So,
as I saw Lisp at school, with all the brackets.
Yes, exactly.
I thought you are all crazy. No, excuse me. Regardless how great it is, I don't like it. This was my first reaction to Lisp. I said, okay, this will never fly.
But it was good because a lot of people already had some experience, but usually with languages like Pascal. And so starting with this functional programming, the professor made sure that everybody started from scratch, and that was quite interesting.
This is a good trick, actually. Yeah, I had the same reaction to Objective-C as I saw, the source code. I said, okay, this is somehow crazy. Sorry, this is like, but yeah. Back to you. So you did C and C++ at the university. You built something special, or we just follow, the curriculum?
that time, I think I mostly followed the curriculum. Later, I started also Java. I mean, it was then the later 90s already, and Java was really very popular then.
At the university or after?
At university.
Okay.
So I did a foreign year in the foreign country in Switzerland.
Cool. Foreign.
University.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's French speaking, so it was quite foreign to me.
That is really foreign. Okay.
And so it was in Lausanne, and there people were already. It was much more oriented according to practical engineering work than our university in Aachen was at the time. And there people were already doing a lot with Java, and I had to do also projects aside from classes to hand them in and get marks for them. And so there I did a lot of Java.
With which Java version you started? You remember that?
I think it was 1.2.
Okay.
It was really brand new at the time. So I remember that I saw a lot of Java coding that was done with 1.0 and 1.1.
Yes.
And in 1.2, a few new things were already introduced. And that's what I remember.
Cool. So you programmed at, didn't want to interrupt you. So what you did with Java at the university then? There
were some interesting classes around genetic programming and genetic algorithms and all those concepts and computer science that are somehow motivated by biology. That was quite interesting, and I had to do a program then showing the genetic programming, so doing new generations of some optimization problem, mutations, and this fitness algorithm that then only lets survive the best individuals per generation to solve some optimization problems.
Yeah. What's interesting with the genetic algorithms is they are, I would say, the idea is quite simple. As I remember, is you have two choices and you add some random stuff to it and you let it go and then evaluate. If it's better, then it will survive. Otherwise, it dies. It works roughly like this, right?
Yes.
So
right.
And I took a look at that because back then, I don't know whether you remember, like 5 to, I don't know, probably 8 years ago, they built an antenna for a satellite using genetic algorithm. And the antenna looked crazy, but it worked very well. It was built with such a genetic algorithm, right?
Mm-hmm. And so I did only a small thing, but the institute there, one of the institutes was, I think, working with Swisscom at the time to optimize the distribution of cell phone stations in Switzerland. Used this there, yes.
But the genetic algorithm is somehow related to backtracing, I always thought, because backtracing was like a primitive idea of that, yeah? You do something, and if it doesn't work, you come back 2 layers and you attempt a different approach.
I don't know. You have to find some encoding of the solutions to a problem and then some fitness function to evaluate the solutions.
Yeah.
And a genome, so to speak, and then the fitness. And we then mimic the natural process of, so we did the crossover of 2 genomes to create a new one, added some degree of mutation, and then so it's not. I don't see that it's related to backtracing.
The backtracing was, for me, is like a primitive form of that. You just tried something and then go back, and then try and go back. And with the genetic, in my eyes, is like combining 2 things and a little bit random. So it's like backtracing on steroids. So for me, from conceptual level.
Okay, but you don't really go back to anything. So you just
exactly. You move forward always in genetic because you always combine 2 results to the next one with a little bit of random. Yes. Exactly. On backtracing, you go back and try something new. So exactly. But I don't know why. I always know if I hear genetic algorithm, I always think about backtracking. And nowadays you could sell it as machine learning, probably, right?
A simple form of that, maybe, yes.
Yeah. Okay, yes. Nice. This sounds actually interesting, and I can imagine that you could do nice visualizations of what actually happens in the system, right?
Yes, and that's what I did in a Java applet.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was interesting because you could look this was almost like a game, right?
Yes. It was fun to watch then.
How is it called? Mendel tree, where you can.
Oh yeah, I know those.
Yeah. I guess it will look almost like that. Okay, cool. You did this at the university. What else? This was quite interesting. So
back in Germany, I got then a job at one of the research institutes in Aachen, and I helped a bit on the research about mobile agents. That was a research topic, a popular research topic then. So little pieces of code that move through a network and decide on their own where to move next.
Yeah.
So
then you remember probably the Egglets framework, right?
I think I heard about it. But
this was from I think from IBM, and the agents were the next idea of Genie. I don't know whether you remember Genie, Java Intelligent Network Infrastructure. And the agents,
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, and the agent was the idea of moving code. So the agent would serialize itself. It would be like a distributed command pattern, something like this. So you have like executor nodes, and the agent can move and gets executed, and you don't know what happens. So, and the challenge was the class loading, as I remember, right? Because that's true. You had to move the classes also, and so that was challenging. I remember that too. Yes. and I was fascinated by that, because what I experimented back then, just for fun, is you could have, I think it's called marshaled object, and you could actually pack or like send the object with the classes over the wire already, like a value without. This was the interesting part, without remotely loading class loaders. So I've wrote a couple of remote class loaders just for fun. I was fascinated by them with caching and whatever. And okay, nice. And you did something interesting with the agents, or was it?
What I did then as a research project for graduation was I built some kind of load balancing service for them. So more like an information service for them, so that they could find out where to find the resources they need. And that was hierarchically it's motivated maybe from things like DNS and so on. And
okay.
These days, probably you would think of Prometheus or a federated Prometheus. I don't know, but
or API gateway. Would I throw like something like this? If you're saying this is like
maybe it was really about measuring performance in several nodes.
Oh, performance. Then Prometheus. Okay.
Yes.
Open matrix.
Aggregating this further up the tree and moving it. I used Korma for that, I think. Yes. So.
Yeah. The funny story is we had already everything. If you would just sell the Java technology the right way back then, so with proper names, it would take complete another trajectory. What I remember, I saw Genie. For me, was Genie like the dream framework for microservices, because there was a load balancing built in. There was no central piece, and it was fairly simple, except the configuration. But you could abstract that. And I remember Sun tried to sell Genie as a distributed printer driver solution for distributing printer drivers. And I say, hey, you are crazy. Who needs that? I mean. We could use, as load balancers, and as I started, to sell my ideas, I say, okay, who cares about you? This comes from Sun, and the Sun had always, I don't know, at least in Germany, completely crazy ideas which had null chance, commercially. So this was like no one was interested in printer drivers and stuff like that. And then they started with, I remember, codec cameras at conference that they can install drivers. Like, but I mean, who cares about cameras drivers? And yeah, this was the problem a little bit. And then it took several years, and we get similar technology again with proper marketing, I would say.
Yeah, so I think they were just a bit early. The network is the computer and all this. That was at that time just maybe too early for the mainstream. Yeah.
And also cloud, the Sun Grid engine, I think they call it.
Yeah.
And I took a look at that, and I mean, what's the problematic part was the packaging of the thing. It was even more terrible than Amazon Lambda 2 years ago. So you had to create a zip and send it over the wire. And I asked them, we have already WARs. Why are you not creating your application servers, put them to the cloud, and I just will ship your WAR? It would be then serverless even. But there was competing department who didn't like properly the Java server guys and tried to create something from scratch. So this was a little problematic, I guess.
Well, that was one of the companies I applied to after university, Sun Microsystems, I think in Nuremberg. And they were also doing grid computing, but it didn't work out. So.
Okay, the grid didn't work out, or your
my application?
Okay.
Probably both. So I mean.
Okay, yeah. And okay, so the your application failed. Oh, sorry. Something interesting happened after your genetic algorithm, or sorry, not genetic, agent investigations.
Oh, I mean, that was my graduation. So,
and after
that, I had to look for a job, and looking for, and it was in 2003. So the industry wasn't exactly in a good shape at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I was lucky then, and found that job at SAP
in Walldorf.
Yes,
I think around 2003, I spent a lot of time in. A little bit time in Walldorf, so I helped to build, I forgot, it was a kind of a web framework. So I tried to help them with the structure of the framework. I forgot the name.
Could you imagine that it's WebDyn Pro?
Yes, the first version. That was in Valda.
That was quite new at that time, I remember, yes.
Yeah, and then I spent many weeks in St. Leon, I think. This is right? The city?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I taught, the ABAP program is Java.
Yes.
And this was very interesting to me because they had a really nice background and we had conversations about, the ABAP virtual machine. And I even met a guy, I don't know how, he actually created the virtual machine with the other guy, very famous guy from SAP, the founder of SAP. What is the name? Plato, right? Hasso Plattner, yeah. I think is the guy who created, and there was like another guy, and both created in some garage the first version of the ABAP, and we had chat about that. So those were crazy times back then, and it was really interesting to convince ABAP programmers to learn Java because they were happy with ABAP. So they couldn't understand why we have external IDE, and they had everything integrated, and they challenged me. They challenged me and say, okay, I don't know ABAP at all. I can just show you how I do those things. And this is how we started to like each other because I showed them a little bit of my world. I asked how it looks looks in ABAP and SAP, and I learned a lot. And it was, for me, from then, this SAP system became a little bit more interesting. But before that, I thought it's like a boring, I don't know, report generator. But then it's okay, this is almost similar architecture like what Java has, actually.
Yeah, so I can imagine how that impression is created, that it's boring. But at the time when it was created, I think that architecture was quite visionary.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah. Funny, though, I was in St. Leon Road at that time too, probably for my first classes at SAP to get my introduction to the company and everything. And I was already familiar with Java, and I had to learn ABAP at that time to do my job. So.
And what I also remember, the Java move from SAP was caused by a young CTO of SAP. I forgot his name.
Mm-hmm.
And
Shai Agassi.
Yeah, exactly. And he wanted to have the Java, and then nice Java things happens in SAP. Okay, cool. So if we can talk about that, so at SAP, what you did then? What you started with? Was it a complete switch gears and did something completely different, or you stick with your agents and stuff like that?
No, I mean, it was a bit more to the ground, I would say. I mean, you have to solve actual problems people have, and so what I did is, yes, actually, I approached the SAP recruiters at CeBIT and said I want to do distributed systems, middleware for distributed systems. That was what I told them. Mm-hmm. And then I started in a department that developed a component called master data management. So it's about moving master data between different systems. And so the actual distributed systems aspect wasn't too strong from my perspective, as I was used to much more technical things. But I learned a lot about the whole enterprise software world. And so looking back at that, so I really learned a lot, even though at that time I may not have liked it all the time, but was quite interesting. Yeah.
And you used Java?
Not that much. I still used ABAP at that time.
Okay. So ABAP was also used internally to program things? Okay, yes. I thought it was like an external language and internally using C, Java, or something else.
No. I mean, still today, a lot of the SAP applications are programmed in ABAP. So.
And then you, at one point, did Java again at SAP, or stick with ABAP?
A bit, yeah, but much later. So we had this integration component. At that time, it was called Exchange Infrastructure. That is one of those enterprise integration frameworks. And this did things like use either Java or XSLT for mapping data structures. So I had some look also at that, but not that much. So I was mainly doing ABAP, yes.
Okay.
Those times.
Is the framework has something to do with the Java Resource Adapter? Because I use sometimes the JCA, which was called by SAP JRR, to call SAP routines from Java. So in several projects back then. Is it part of that, or is something different? You know that?
Well, I sometimes also used that. So that might also be related to what is called JCO at SAP.
JCO, Java Connector. Exactly. The JCO is the lower level, and this is wrapped with Java Resource Adapter.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And the JCO, you had to know I forgot the name of the routines at the SAP part. And then it
RCs.
Yeah, exactly. And then it almost worked like a stored procedure call from Java. And I was able to install that on different application servers. So I got some jobs, to help people to work with that. And it worked actually well. So if you knew, the name of the routines and the input and output parameters, that's also unusual as I remember, you could get result from a parameter, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and this worked actually well. And we abstracted that with a thin, layer, one Pojo, which abstracted that, and they used that, and everyone was happy. So, and everyone was surprised how easy it actually was.
Yes, I can imagine. I mean, it's even more easy in between two ABAP-based systems because it's then very natural to the programming language. It's really like calling a local function, and so yeah.
So now,
but yeah.
And you did something interesting with Java at SAP, or you are just now chief ABAP officer?
Oh no. Later, several years later, I was doing a bit more on Java again. We had to investigate different application servers, because we were also integrating with companies that just got acquired, and they were not all using already the SAP application server for Java.
Oh.
But we had also to look at JBoss and other application servers. And I was looking a lot at the JEE standard at the time, because that was the only thing we were supposed to rely on, so to make that really portable. And that was actually quite frustrating because all the application servers had their subtleties, especially in class loading and doing really portable enterprise Java development, at least at that time, was quite difficult.
When was it? Which year, you remember?
I think it must have been around 2008, 2009.
Because this was fairly late. As this usually should work better, except you did the ear part. 2008 or 2009, you can go the worst, then it would work perfectly. Ears were more challenging.
So if you just did applications, probably it could have worked. We were supposed to do some framework, and so resource injection on our own, according to certain annotations. And
but this is not standardized at all. This is the extensive.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. This is of course. This is really challenging, and you cannot use Java standard for that because Java is supposed to be used by apps, and this works well. But if you try to extend the server, this is not standardized at all. And I guess the most challenging one was probably JBoss or Whitefly with modules, right?
I don't really remember all the details. But
okay.
Yeah. After that episode, it got back again to ABAP programming for a while.
Of course, you said never again. That class loading hell, back to ABAP.
No, it was just also because of the projects. It's not really a personal decision, but we later did some tool development, or I got into a team that did developer tools, so not really the server side so much, but we developed developer tools for different platforms. So one, again, in ABAP, but also another one for Eclipse. And so we did Eclipse plugin development, learned a bit about OSGI and this world.
You like that?
First, yes, but after a while, I mean, it can get really complex. The dependency hell and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Because for me, the Java E was lesser hell than OSGI. So this was my personal touch, but yeah.
And
body class.
What I probably missed to explain, before I did all this, I was also interested in looking in information discovery, so enterprise search, and had a look at semantic web.
UDDI?
More like not really. That was not related to Java. So that was before I did Java again at SAP, and in the middle of the
semantic
2000s.
Web, like RDF.
Yes. RDF, OL, and these languages.
It is interesting, actually. And still,
it was more a personal research topic. It wasn't really applied at SAP, but was quite interesting, and I was a fan of that for a while, but it didn't really take off. Maybe it will these days with all the machine learning and artificial intelligence in the background.
A little bit. Schema.org, I think it's called?
Yes.
So you can have like a metadata snippets, which additionally, or either metadata text or JSON, which describes, additional metadata from. So this is actually useful.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, that was with OWL. You were also looking at what is it called? Reasoning and these things. So really evaluating the different statements and making new.
You could actually you would see it's almost like graph database, like you would see the the links between concepts and stuff.
Yes.
I was also very into it. I read that because I thought I could use it, in my Java projects. I felt that it will never take off in the web, but for in a project could be interesting. And Neo4j, like for the graph database, I think you could just, with the concept from back then, RDF, you could apply them to Neo4j, do something with it, I guess.
Yeah, times changed and the projects changed, and after a while I looked into different things. So we did then something around the standard called ODATA. That's where I wrote those developer tools, and so it was design time tools for ODATA. And
I like OData, and I don't understand why.
Really? And you know it, because not so many do.
I mean, OData became a thing as Microsoft came with the Azure cloud, and OData came from, it was like the first standard for REST proposed by Microsoft, and then they used it in their own cloud. And I look at that as, okay, this is not bad because it defines the RESTful principles of OData, of RESTful principles of REST, of course, of HTTP. And you can have like a reflection, you can fetch, you can define filters and stuff. So everything is predefined. So I don't have to carry it by myself. In one project, I had to use the Apache Olingo project.
Yeah, so that's
and it worked somehow well. The problem was a developer extended that, and we had to think what we should do with the extension because it was a fork. And then I said, okay, actually, we should standardize it again and do, for instance, a microprofile API OData, because for me, OData is more interesting than GraphQL, for instance, right? Because OData already talks with the data source, and GraphQL is more like a facade, which involves a lot of work. So you need to write, the layer by yourself. And OData is already ready to go, and lots of projects just need, the data to be exposed. And this is very pragmatic stuff. So I'm really surprised it doesn't take off. And I thought now, this year, there will be a little bit more quiet, and I get some time to do something with it, but I get more requests than ever. So this is a little bit of a problem. But I really like OData. What's your opinion?
That's good. No, I mean, I think it plays an important role, and it is also fairly easy for less experienced developers to expose REST APIs using OData.
Yeah, and what I don't like in OData is the naming convention. It looks strange. So if you look at the I forgot this. At the URI, I think the parameters like underscore something, that doesn't look right. So, but beside this, if they would have a nicer, feeling to it, it would be perfect. If you look at the URI, you'd say, okay, this is crap. It will never fly. But the concepts are great, but the naming is horrible from my perspective. Or the naming conventions.
Actually, we currently discuss in the CloudEvents discovery, for the CloudEvents discovery service, we discussed REST APIs. And several times already some challenges occurred, and I could always point to the OData standard definition and say it has already been solved there, and in OData it's done this way, and it was fun to see it again, how it can be useful.
So you spent some time on OData. Why that? Is it like assignment, or you wanted to do this?
Both, I suppose. So I mean, I applied for that department who did it, and so we spent some time. As I said, it plays a quite important role at SAP, as it's serving the data for most of the UIs, and I think for that purpose, it's also really good. And,
for SAP UI5 out of the box.
Yes, exactly. As it's like talking to a relational database, and there it's really well suited, I think.
Yeah, and I use SAP UI5 web components a lot. Actually, they are great.
Okay.
I'm not using the framework. I'm just using the web components, which have actually nothing to do with SAP, but you can just load date pickers. Perfect. For instance, I could just load. Actually, in one of my courses, I even loaded the date picker. And at the recent conference, someone asked me, "Can you show us how to add, third-party web component?" And I just thought, okay, the most impressive is probably the date picker. So I just loaded the date picker as a web component and added to the view, and it worked right away.
Okay, so I have to admit I never did UI5 myself.
The web components are really, I would say, they are super simple. They look great, and they are standard based. So there's no exaggeration, no overengineering, nothing.
Okay, so I heard about them, but I have never tried them.
Search for SAP UI5 web components, and you will find it.
Yeah, so my colleagues probably would be happy to hear this, and
just forward to them. So I was happy to talk with them. But
okay.
So you did the OData stuff, and what happened then? So was it done, or were you bored by APIs?
Well, the design time tools, there was less focus on the design time tools, I would say, and I was looking also for new challenges, and so got more into the asynchronous integration, so messaging, and that's how I got then to also to serverless, and once, it was quite nice coincidence, when we started doing serverless in our team, we were also, SAP was just becoming a member of CNCF, and we were all asked if we see some special interest group or working group we would be interested in. And I saw a serverless working group and said, yeah, of course, let's try. And the next coincidence, at that time, they were just getting started doing the CloudEvent standard. It wasn't even called CloudEvents yet. So that name was only found a few weeks later. And so I kept participating. Yeah, about a bit more than 2 years ago, I think, yeah.
First, serverless. Is there any standard for serverless, actually? I don't think so, right? So serverless is just, there's a couple of implementation, but there is no standards as far as I know, right?
Not really. I mean, that's what the serverless working group is trying to identify topics for which some standardization can be done and specified.
But
that's
there's nothing, nothing released yet, right?
So CloudEvents is one part, because events play an important role in triggering functions and everything. So that's why we started with this. And there is another specification about serverless workflows. So also done from within the serverless working group. I think they are just not sure what the status is, but I think they are becoming a project on their own now.
And what's the purpose of serverless workflows? So what does this mean?
Put it short, I think it's doing similar things to what the step functions, I think it's called in Lambda. Okay. So what they are doing there, so you execute functions, you that again create some events, and those events then trigger something else, and so you have these automatons. I think it's basically you create events, you create a new state, and that triggers again something, and a new event is created, and so on.
Yeah, and
it's a bit like a state machine, yes.
And serverless is, I would say, very similar to almost agents, reverse agents, because for me, serverless like a distributed command pattern again. So a serverless function is a command which is triggered by something, and this was not standardized. Now they try to standardize that with so-called CloudEvent. This is my understanding. And the cool part is that the CloudEvent spec is actually fairly simple. So this is like a JSON structure, and I actually using CloudEvents if I need an inspiration or idea how a message should look like in Java. I just pick CloudEvent because there's nothing else available right now, and this is, you don't even need a framework. I use just JSONB, and this is like, you need, I think, a type, and type is mandatory. Then you have the extensions, and there's just
type, source,
exactly. We'll go through this. I think this is type, source, and the payload is an extension, right? It's called.
No, the payload is. We in the beginning had an attribute for this called data, but it's now depends on the protocol binding if it's actually an attribute called data or if it's just the payload of a message. So I think it's type, source, the version of the CloudEvent specification that is used, so spec version, and an event ID. I think those are the mandatory fields.
Exactly. And the event and type have to be unique, so far as I know, right? The combination of both.
Source and ID, I think.
Source and ID, exactly. So not just source and ID, and type is a MIME type.
No, type is something that is supposed, or it should be a namespace, reverse DNS namespace event type. So you also have content type, maybe, or data content type.
The data content type, this is what's inside. This is what I meant, sorry. This is the, but this was the MIME type, more or less. So
that's, exactly.
What is encoded in the message? What is the type of the message? Okay, this is the, how do you call it? Content type.
Right? Data content type.
Data content type. Exact name. And what is your type? So what you mentioned now, this is just the namespace, right? So we know from where.
Yes.
Okay.
So the type of the event, what happened, so to speak. So source it is where did it happen. Type is what happened, and then there is an optional field called subject, and then you could say to what happened this. So that's then again what you can have.
Yeah. And then we have content type, which is which says what's inside this JSON structure, because you could send inside a JSON, XML, JSON, whatever. This is the MIME type, so you have to know how to extract the information from there. And this is basically it, right?
Yes.
But in general application, if I would send a CloudEvent from a microservice, I would use the source would be the URI of my microservice. I could just use the URI of a microservice as the origin where it happens. And the UID, I would just create a simple counter because then it would be unique. This would be a proper way of using CloudEvents.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for the source, you're quite free to what you want to use there. It's just a URI reference. Has to be.
And the type, would it be? I have a microservice which emits, let's say, log events. So I'm sending logs as cloud events. It's not very efficient, but let's say I'm doing this. So then my logger microservice, the URI of the microservice would be the source. What would be the type? The type would be, I could define by myself. Well, what would be the best practice?
Yes.
What would be the best practice? Or best practice an idea?
For log, I don't know. Maybe it's just log entry created, or you just thinking about it. You could also make it a bit more fine-grained if you have distinction between warning and information and so on. You could also distinguish this in the type, warning created, or something like this. It's all about subscribing and routing events. So whatever you think is useful to distinguish this kind of events from others and to subscribe to this specific kind of or type of events.
So and then I would put the event somewhere, and the hope would be does not work exactly this way, but there could be a kind of cloud which understands the cloud event and would deserialize this and convert the contents of the event into Java or JavaScript or whatever, and call a serverless function like Amazon Lambda, for instance.
Yes, I mean it can also be used, of course, without any functions in other contexts, but yes. So that's actually what we even do for the serverless runtime at SAP. So there it goes directly into the parameters of the function.
And the serverless runtime at SAP is SAP invention. So there's in SAP Cloud somewhere a serverless Lambda runtime where I can install functions, right?
Yes. And it's, I mean, behind the scenes, it's based on open technologies like Kubernetes and so on. But yes.
Okay, native, I guess.
Not that much yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Per accident, what I found out right now was the naming and stuff of cloud events. I named my Kafka events very similar what we talk about now. So what was the idea behind the event, why it happened, what happened, and the timestamp and the payload. Actually, we could use cloud events, as a template to send for creation of Kafka events, just as an idea of the rough structure, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are protocol bindings for all those messaging technologies like Kafka, NATS, AMQP, MQTT, and so on.
Even JAX-RS. I saw there is an example. If you click on Java,
really?
there's an example for JAX-RS, and I think JSON P with the REST easy or something. So I was stunned that is already available for Jakarta E or microprofile. Yeah. If you go to Cloud Events and you click on Java, you will find HTTP RESTful and then it will go to...
I am not too familiar with the Java SDK, I have to admit, because I'm not doing Java these days.
You are an ABAP guy, that's it.
No, these days it's Golang. So.
And how you like Golang?
Yeah, it's like back to the roots. I mean, I started, as I told you, with C. Go is kind of a logical consequence, or an evolution to C, I think.
Why not Rust?
Well, I would also look into Rust for sure, but I mean, in the Kubernetes space, Go is just that important. I mean, you have all the libraries and everything. So,
but Go, so in Kubernetes, the newer stuff is created with Rust already, right? So it's not like Rust is a little bit more popular because it's even smaller than Go. It's not.
I heard that it's gaining popularity and that it's really catching up with regards to usage in the Kubernetes environment. But still, the controller framework like Kube Builder and all these important tools, if you do Kubernetes, they're first of all available in Go. So
what I found from the cloud specification right now, there is already a nice example. It is a Jakarta E example for cloud events. So it's very, very, I would say, pragmatic. So it's just one REST resource. Event receiver resource, which creates a cloud event, IO cloud events, cloud event, and the coordinates are cloud event, HTTP, RESTful, WS, and the version 2. And this is 2 days ago it happened. So that was the recent version. So they're working and looks Jersey and REST easy is the Yeah, and
so I know that recently a lot of people have been quite active in SDK development, also for Java, for JavaScript and Go, and it's really great to see that.
And from Java, the how to create a cloud event is CloudEvent.v1, which is the Cloud Event Builder, CloudEventBuilder.v1, with ID, with type, with source. And the source is, of course, uri.create. Type is example vertex in this particular case, and the ID is hello, and then build, and you have your event.
Yeah.
So it's very pragmatic.
It has been the goal from the beginning to keep it very simple. So in the first months of the CloudEvents discussions in the serverless working group, there have been quite a few discussions about introducing new attributes, and always some people were then asking again and again, do we need this? Is it really important? And so on. Let's make it an extension. People might use it, but we don't want to have it in the core. So it was really great effort to keep it very simple and small.
Yeah, how it should be. Otherwise, it becomes the new SOAP. It also had, routing.
And there are some people in the group who have vivid memories of that and exactly want to avoid that.
Exactly, right. Because the SOAP was, sold as the solution, and it was misused as a remote procedure call at the end. And I was not aware of any projects with, extensive use of routing and all the nice stuff which was in SOAP but was never used. This would make me angry, actually, with SOAP. Because, the architects and everyone here in SOAP, because everything is solved, routing and so forth, and we won't implement this by ourselves. And then at the end of the day, it was used a remote procedure call just to send, XML as a string array.
Yeah.
And this is okay. This is like not very honest with, Okay, so what are the goals? Or so what I know, the spec right now is not that long, and it just this is at GitHub. It's just a markdown of CloudEvents. I would say probably 50 pages. I have to look, and that is very readable. And so, what you're working then is it not done yet, or what is to do? So
the specification for CloudEvents is rather stable right now. We finished the 1.0, I think, about a year ago almost, and we are now looking into further topics around it. So we met last year in San Diego at KubeCon and discussed what to do next, and had several candidates for topics. And so one of or two of the most important topics we identified were discovery and subscription. So to standardize more on discovering cloud events in a landscape, and also on subscribing to them. So to create a standardized subscription API. And that's what's currently being worked on, those two. In addition, by now, there has been a contribution from Microsoft about a schema registry. So schemas play an important role in cloud events. And so there's also now specification for a standardized API to access a schema registry.
Okay. And the subscription or the publish subscribe what you're working on right now, is it almost like JMS, right? So I can subscribe to topics probably, and then receive the events, or what's the
idea is to really rely on cloud event attributes, so to hide the messaging behind the scenes, and so do subscriptions based on those attributes we discussed, so the source or the subject, because cloud events are supposed to be routed across several hops and can even switch protocols on their way. So that's the
cool idea
of that. Yes,
that there will be no topics. The topics are ad hoc created by attributes of the cloud events, right?
Yes, and maybe by the infrastructure, not really part of the specification.
No, but conceptually. Yep. So I could just send a cloud event to the cloud, and let's say to the the entire cloud, not just Microsoft or SAP or whatever. So the entire cloud, and then because my cloud event, I have to be more precise right now, has the source type and ID. With that, there's like a virtual channels where I can subscribe, and they are supposed to be unique. And then I will receive the event. Of course, in practice, we will get brokers and channels or topics or whatever, because it's impossible just to send something and hope it will arrive. But
exactly.
Yeah. But I think in practice we will get topics, and in the topics are different cloud events, and we can subscribe directly to attributes of the cloud event, right?
Yes. So there are the subscription API sees both cases. So one thing is called the native subscription capabilities in messaging protocols like MQTT or MQP. You already have something like a topic and can subscribe to that by the means of that protocol. But in other protocols, or when you want to have more something like it's called a push style event. I mean, the most prominent case would probably be a webhook. you then can use that subscription API we are specifying there to subscribe to events.
And will you get something like an expression language? So I say, I'm just interested in will be exact match or partial match or stuff like that. So you know what I mean?
Yeah. So far we have just so we already have planned to have different filter types in those subscriptions. So far we just have specified what we call a basic filter set, where you just do I think it's prefix, suffix matching or exact matching. But I would expect that at some point we will have also more sophisticated ways to define filters. And
because it's JSON, you could actually write, a CloudEvent emitter in JavaScript in a web component and send it to the backend directly via HTTP2 or WebSockets, for instance, right?
Yes, I suppose so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing prevent you because this is like, this is a plain JSON. It's easy to consume from JavaScript, so you can have direct browser integration actually over WebSockets or HTTP2. The direct integration.
Okay, I mean, it's not always JSON. It depends on the protocol binding being used. You can have HTTP binary mode, then the attributes are in the HTTP header, and the payload is just the message body. Or also for other protocols, there is this distinction. In AMQP, you can have binary mode or what we call structured mode. And it depends. It's not always just JSON.
No, but the example in this spec is JSON, the last one. And
okay, yeah.
This is why I got the JSON. And you're right. So I now see the object. And by the way, this spec is not even 15 pages, I guess, because it's one pager in GitHub, and this is around 500 lines, I think. Center, I think, with some. The entire object here is the spec version 1.0. Then we have the type, which is in this particular case, com GitHub pull create. This is the name of the type. Then we have the source, and this is GitHub.com CloudEvent spec pull. So this is the source where it happened. Then we have the subject. This is, in this particular case, is nothing 1, 2, 3. So it's just hello world. ID is, this is looks like an ID. The time, of course, when it happened. And this looks like an RFC type.
Yes.
Then, exactly. Then is an extensions, which 2 extensions, data content type. This is what because this is for me the most important type, what's inside. In this particular case, is text XML because it's encoded and the data is the payload.
And then there's also data schema, I think. So where you can then add a URL or URI of a schema describing the
data
content
schema,
or the payload. Yeah.
This was not part of the example, but there's specified. This is the URI. Identifies the schema that data adheres to. So it looks like a very pragmatic spec. I think this is the difference to, the WS star specs back then, where, I think this spec is shorter than the, forward of the, or just of the WS star specifications back then, as you remember then.
Yeah, I mean, you can even send a CloudEvent just by using a curl command or everything. It's really simple. Yeah.
And who is using already CloudEvents? You know this?
Well, some users, I think, or some companies using it are listed on that CloudEvents homepage. I think if you scroll down on that CloudEvents.io, I know for sure.
I mean, do you know someone from your project?
I know about Azure, of course. They really support it, as they also are a very big contributor to the whole project. We use it at SAP. And
interesting. Oracle Cloud
several
use this. Alibaba.
Yeah.
Then Debezium. This is already had it on the show. This is Gunnar Morling. So it's a nice guy. What Debezium is a nice thing. It serializes the database transactions into Kafka events. Then Azure Event Cloud. Cogito is also nice because Cogito ships with Quarkus, which is a nice and small Java framework, way smaller and faster than Go, of course. Then we have OpenFast and then Serverless Event Gateway. And now it comes to Serverless Workload specification, which is listed here. So it's also used here. And Trigger Mesh, which just seems like a product.
Yes, it is. Also in the serverless space. I think they're also based on Knative.
So perfect. So any other things you are working on which are more exciting than serverless cloud events and workflows?
No, that actually keeps me quite busy. So
okay. So it was really fun. I learned a lot. And thank you. And I would like to re-invite you back, to hear what happens in the serverless world. And hopefully back to Java. You will find out that Go is way too complicated and way too bloated. And you need, some of your old J2E memories with class loaders. So
I don't know. Most people say that about Java. Way too bloated these days, but okay.
No, Java is great. I actually do all my work with Java, and I really appreciate it. And actually, I wanted to do more with Go, but I get so many requests with Java that is mission impossible. I also wanted, to do more with Rust, but also not happened. So the only language which I really did more than or did a little bit more was C, C++, and now a lot of JavaScript. But anything else is mission impossible.
I always wanted to get a bit more deeper into other JVM-based languages like Scala, but never really found the time.
This is not a bad thing. I think Go is more interesting, I would say. My opinion is then do something completely different. So Java, JVM is okay, but if you interested in more, I would just pick complete different language to learn something completely new. And because if you do Scala or other Kotlin, you always have the opportunity to talk back to Java or whatever. So a little bit not that honest. But if you start with Go or Rust, you are in complete new environment. You are forced to learn more.
Yeah. So Rust is pretty much on the top of the list right now.
Okay.
For the next language to look at.
I think something different. Well, you know what you will have to learn soon?
Oh?
WebAssembly.
No? Okay. Yeah, I heard about that too, of course. Yes.
And this makes perfect sense with serverless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yes.
So I think this would be number one. If you do something with WebAssembly, ping me. We have a chat again about WebAssembly, serverless WebAssembly.
That's also on my list to keep an eye on.
But it's not as high as Rust. It should be higher than Rust in my eyes.
I don't know. They don't really compete, I would say. But yeah.
Yeah, but list, you cannot have two items in number one.
That's true. It's it's not a list, but a mind map, and there are different branches in that. Yes.
That's fair. Okay. So, Klaus, thank you.
Yep.
And do you have where people can find you? Do you have I don't know, a blog probably or Twitter or whatever? Is it?
I'm on Twitter, yes, and on GitHub.
Oh, very good. What's your GitHub coordinates?
It's Deissner K.
Deissner K. And yes. Twitter?
It's the other way around. It's K Deissner.
Of course. Yes. And YouTube is in the middle. The K. No. Okay.
No, I will put some history, but yeah.
Yeah. What is the history? So tell me just the history.
Oh, it's. I started in my private life with K Deissner on GitHub, and then had to get a GitHub handle because I was doing all that work on GitHub now for SAP. And then I chose another one for that, and that was Deissner K.
Okay.
And because that was always also my login name in the ABAP systems. That was the history. Okay. And that's why I chose it there. But at that time, I already had the Twitter account using K Deissner.
So you have two GitHub accounts, Deissner K and K Deissner?
Yeah, but the private one never really took off, so I didn't really do anything there.
So I will probably find still the Amiga stuff, right? Your disk.
That never happened on GitHub, but yeah.
Okay. So thank you, it was fun, and see you next time.
Yeah, bye. Thank you.